The residents of Willow Heights rarely acknowledged John Jackson, the black janitor, who quietly kept their community spotless to them. He was invisible, a background figure in their world of privilege, but when a deadly storm left the neighborhood stranded, John risked everything to save the very people who had dismissed him. What followed not only shocked the residents, but changed the dynamic of Willow Heights forever. Let's go back to where it all began. For over 20 years, John Jackson had worked at Willow Heights, starting before sunrise each day. At 55, his body bore the marks of a life of hard work. His lean, slightly stooped shoulders and weathered face told a story of endurance despite the physical toll of his job. John carried himself with quiet pride. His deep brown eyes reflected not just fatigue but an unwavering determination to provide for his family. The neighborhood of Willow Heights was the epitome of wealth. Sprawling mansions lined the streets, each with perfectly manicured lawns and towering gates to the residents. It was a sanctuary of exclusivity and status to John. It was his workplace, a place where his efforts went unnoticed, where he was treated as an outsider. One brisk morning, John was sweeping the communal garden paths. The marble walkways sparkled in the sunlight, a testament to his dedication. Yet as she worked, Miss Whitmore, one of the wealthiest and most arrogant residents, stormed over. "You missed a spot," Whitmore snapped, pointing to a cleansed section of the path. John paused, straightening up. "Good morning, sir, I'll take care of it," said his voice calm buttered. Whitmore sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "People like you should be grateful too. Then be here, just do your job." The words stung not because they were new, but because they carried the weight of countless similar remarks John had endured over the years. She gripped his broom tighter, resisting the urge to respond around them. A few residents glanced over but quickly looked away. No one intervened. Later that day, while John cleaned the park, Whitmore's golden retriever tore through the area, scattering leaves and tracking mute everywhere. Just as John began fixing the mess, Whitmore returned. "What is this?" "I leave for 10 minutes. And this is what happens." "Hatar, we're paying you for," Whitmore yelled, his voice rising with indignation. John tried to explain, pointing toward the dog's muddy paw prints. But Whitmore cut him off with a glare. "Lazy hem," muttered loudly enough for others to hear. That evening, John sat at this modest kitchen table with his wife Mary. The humiliation lingered. "How much longer can it take this?" husked his voice, heavy with frustration. Mary reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "They don't define your worth, John. Don't let their ignorance take your pride." Her words comforted him, but the weight of the day remained. A few days later, John overheard a conversation while trimming the hedges. Whitmore, speaking to a group of residents, said John should be grateful. "People like him don't aspire to much anyway." One of the newer residents, Eric, shifted uncomfortably. "Don't you think that's a little unfair?" husked hesitantly. Whitmore scoffed. "Oh, come on, Eric. That's just how the world works. She's here to serve us." John quietly walked away, hiding the hurt that burned inside him. That night, he shared the exchange with Mary. "They'll never see you sequels," she said. "You don't need their approval." Mary replied gently, "You know who you are, that's what matters." As the days passed, the storm loomed on the horizon. When it finally arrived, it was relentless. Torrential rain flooded the streets, and the usually calm creek turned into a raging river. John watched from a maintenance shed as the water rose dangerously high. Suddenly, shouts pierced the storm. Car was trapped near the swollen creek, its passengers panicking. John recognized them, residents of Willow Heights, including Whitmore. For a moment, Johan hesitated. Memories of the humiliation he'd endured flashed in his mind, but then instinct took over. Grabbing a rope, crowbar, and an old tarp, John ran into the storm, securing the rope to a sturdy tree. He waded into the freezing water. The current was fierce, pulling at him with every step, but John's focus didn't falter. One by one, he guided the terrified residents to safety. "Finally here," aged Whitmore, who was paralyzed with fear. "You're going to be okay," John said, firmly helping him out of the car. Whitmore clung to him as they made their way to solid ground. By the time emergency crews arrived, the neighborhood had gathered, watching in stunned silence. John, drenched and exhausted, stood apart from the crowd, his actions speaking louder than words ever could. For the first time, the residents truly saw John Otis. Janitor Butasahirov, and Whitmore, usually full of bravado, was silent the next morning. Whitmore approached John awkwardly. "Thank you," he said. "I guess I never really saw you for who you are." Other residents began treating JN with newfound respect. Eric, the younger resident, took it further, organizing community meeting to address biases within the neighborhood. A fundraiser was even started to provide better tools for John's work. John didn't expect Whitmore or the others to change overnight, but had noticed small shifts of smile here, aching word there for the first tea. He walked through Willow Heights with his head held high, no longer invisible. The storm had washed away more than debris. It had forced the community to confront their prejudices and see the quiet strength of the man they had overlooked for so long. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe to learn short story and hit the bell icons so you never miss an incredible story like this one. Thank you for watching.